Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Suzanne Eppermanis, and welcome. We're so glad that you are going to be joining us for How Can We Change the Story? As our panelists are taking their spots on the stage, I can just go over a few housekeeping items with you as we welcome you here to our auditorium. We have restrooms in the outward lobby. We have refreshments. Hopefully you found those. Hopefully you also were handed a little booklet when you came in, as well as a few other brochures and action cards that were on that table in the lobby. Help yourself if you do want refreshments later on in the evening. One very important item is to just let everyone know that we are recording these sessions. So both the panelist conversations as well as the audience Q&A. So that means a couple things. One is when we do get to the audience Q&A, if you could hold your question until we get to you with a microphone, because unless you're holding a microphone, nobody, either here or in perpetuity, and the YouTube channel will ever be able to hear what you were asking. So if you could help us with that, that would be great. We are, as I said, recording these and putting them out on our YouTube channel. We've already got the first two sessions that are out there. Centenary, Change the Story. You'll on the YouTube search field, you should have no difficulty finding that. But again, thank you all for joining us in this evening's topic, which of course is food insecurity, but it's part of a broader series. It's a 5-part series, and some of you I know have been at previous sessions, so it's really great to have you continue to come back and join us. And we titled this, How Can We Change the Story? Because we really felt like here at Centenary with our Justice and Reconciliation Ministry team that we really wanted to not only learn about these topics, but also figure out what little piece of the elephant we can nibble on. So at the end of your handout, that little multi-page stapled packet that we gave you, on the very end of that, there is a tear-off sheet that if you would like to be part of a team after this evening that is learning more about the topic, ultimately doing something about the topic, then we would love to have you give us your contact information for how we can get in touch with you. And even if you've signed up previously, if this topic tonight is something that you are also interested in, please, we don't mind getting the same name and contact information with each subsequent topic, because what we will be doing as a steering committee for the Justice and Reconciliation Ministry team, we'll be looking to see, okay, these are the topics, these are the areas that had, the most interest, a real strong willingness to help lead a work team, an action team. So that is really where this is heading. So the topics that we have been looking at in our Change the Story series are issues that we all know are real and affecting our neighbors here in Winston-Salem. They are topics that our Centenary congregation initially said that they would like to understand better. So that is why when you look at the whole lineup of topics, it's not an exhaustive list, but they are very key issues that a lot of folks felt very seriously about wanting to better understand. So that's kind of the context there. Just a few other little sort of tidbits, and some of this even came out in some of your little quiz sheet. How much do you know? For those of you not familiar with John Wesley, he was the founder of Methodism in the 1700s, late 1700s. In fact, he hung out with the Moravians, so they're kind of like first cousins. Many of you know that already. But one of the really cool things about John Wesley is that he really felt like social holiness was important, as was personal holiness. That is not only our relationship with God our Father, but our relationship with our neighbors. And so taking that to the next step, at Centenary, our Justice and Reconciliation, I'm just going to start saying J&R, because otherwise that's just way too many syllables. So our J&R team, which was formed just a couple years ago by our church council, and we just really felt like that notion of social holiness, that really means that we're loving our neighbor better and more fully if we are really taking action to improve everyone's access, dignity, justice, all the issues of food, health, hunger, housing, poverty, just those baseline social holiness issues. So that's the backdrop for JNR. And of course, this is work that has been done by Methodists and non-Methodists around our community for many, many, many years. This is just Centenary's effort now to be more organized in our learning and to say, okay, who's already working on these issues and how can we help the people who are already expert in these issues? So definitely trying not to reinvent any wheels. So I would like to just briefly acknowledge the members of the steering committee for JNR. We have Ellen Kirby in the front row. Ellen, would you just stand? Or Laura Young, we have with us also. We've got Nicole Kidman in the back. We have Nicole's twin, Nicole Johnson. I went to see an AMC movie 2 nights ago, and so that's still stuck in my head. So, and then we've also got Martha Logeman. Martha, wave or stand up. So if you have any questions at all, and plus we've got a team of very dedicated volunteers. Anybody you see wearing a name tag means they're part of the team, and so they can answer any questions that you may have. Let's make sure that I've got everything taken care of, but I guess now we are ready to move forward with our panel, and we welcome this evening. We're just so thrilled to have this group of folks. We have with us as our moderator Dudley Watts, who is our Forsyth County manager, at least until the end of June, I believe. So he will be moderating, and he is a member of Centenary, so we're just really, really so thrilled that he's sharing his expertise and his gifts in so many ways. We have Jan Jones, who is with Second Harvest Food Bank, and she is their Director of Public Policy. Some of you may already know her if you hang out with the food bank crowd. We have Tanya Hairston, who is with the Crisis Control Ministry, and she is the manager for the food pantry. So we'll be hearing from Tanya and some of her client stories. We have Crystal Dixon, who is from Wake Forest University as an assistant professor in the Department of Health and Exercise Science. So really looking forward to what she has to share. And then we have Kyle Luth. Kyle's done a lot of different things lately. He is currently a business counselor, small business counselor at the Winston-Salem Women's Business Center, part of the Enterprise Center at the Simon G. Atkins Community Development Corp beside Winston-Salem State, but his other claim to fame among many is that he also was an AP bio teacher at the Career Center. So if any of you have kids or grandkids who were there at a certain time frame, he was also the really cool AP bio teacher. So, just what a wealth of wisdom and gifts we have here on stage. So thank you all again. I'm going to turn it over to Dudley and this esteemed panel, and we look forward to your remarks.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Suzanne. So y'all picked a really complicated, difficult problem to dive into on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. But I got to say, they put together a great panel of really just an interesting group of folks. I wondered why in the world I should be the facilitator. Ellen Kirby should be the facilitator. She's sort of the food person, but I'm honored to do it. Throughout my career, my job in terms of local public policy and the local set of services that counties provide, and my faith and my membership in the Methodist Church have always, been an important part of my day job, and it's been, obviously an important part of my faith journey as well. The direction was really clear: feed my sheep. Right? I mean, it was. As I've worked through, counties are connected into this ecosystem through federal policy and through some state policy, and it is just an extremely complicated area in terms of what does a safety net in a community look like. Obviously, the two big federal programs that are the big safety net programs are the unemployment insurance program, and that's. The counties are not involved in that at all. And then the second one that is the highest threshold of benefit that flows through counties as is the food stamp or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so we didn't really have a lot about that, but I brought two pieces of information about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Jan's kind of an expert in it because she's connected to it from the food bank perspective. But I did want you to kind of have that as we go through this and as you sort of frame this discussion. It's interesting from a public policy perspective. And as we look at poverty and hunger and those issues in this community, Forsyth County if you take the 100 counties and put them from top to bottom and where we are with poverty and food insecurity issues, once you pull out sort of the top group of them, we're kind of right in the middle. The other look at North Carolina is we are mostly an urban state. Forsyth is one of, depending upon how you sort of divvy them up, 5 or 6, 8 maybe what we would call kind of urbanized counties. And so we do have the issues of urban homelessness, these hard, difficult issues around some urban crime and things like that. But we shake out, the issue here is we're kind of in the middle of the pack as you look at it from that perspective. Again, in North Carolina, Health and Human Services we operate with state-supervised, locally administered Health and Human Services. So we've got about 120 people that do eligibility work for Medicaid and food stamps. And then we've got a fairly significant program integrity arm that when there are complaints or folks believe that there's fraud kind of in that system, that's all that kind of stuff is actually handled here locally. And so, if we got into that, you could probably talk for an hour and a half. So I think I want to quickly kind of hand it off to the panel because they've got, what you've got is a really great panel with folks that have, I think, different views of this issue and this problem in the community and probably different views about what some potential solutions are. And so I will start out with Jan Jones. As was mentioned, she's policy director of the Second Harvest Food Bank. And she's going to see it both from the direct service provider perspective and then also as they deal with the federal policy and the state policy that is there for food banks. And so, kind of sort of characterize the data of the problem for us, Jan.
Thank you, Dudley. And I appreciate being asked to be here, Ellen, tonight. Thank you for sharing. Second Harvest Food Bank, I have been at Second Harvest for 16 years now. I started in 2008. And I started out working directly with the agencies, with Margaret at Crisis Control. I would visit with her. And now started as 2 years ago, I got the title that I had really wanted for a long time, and that is Director of Public Policy. I love this work because I see that policy is the way that we're really going to address the issue of food insecurity as well as others. Yes, we are going to address it. We're always going to have food assistance programs, but policies really are what works, and we'll get into that just a little bit later when we talk about policies. In the handout that you were provided, there is a chart. Second Harvest Food Bank is a regional. We cover 18 counties in Northwest North Carolina. We are part of the Feeding America network, and all 100 counties in North Carolina are covered by a Feeding America, one of the Feeding America food banks. We have 6 sister food banks in North Carolina. And the chart that you're looking at is a comparison across our service area. We say we cover from Boone to Burlington. And this is only tracking 2 years that I'm showing you right now. It begins in January of 2022 and goes through February of 2024. So you are seeing the, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Page 5 of the staple handout. Page 5 is
Sorry. I knew what I was talking from. Didn't think to ask if anyone else was where we were, on the same page, literally on the same page. So as you can see, our trajectory is going up. When we look at month over month, when we were looking at 22 compared to 23, basically an average across 50% increase every month that we were seeing through our partner agency network. And then that has continued on into 23, into 24. We're still seeing that dramatic increase. You'll see that there are a couple of dips on this. We always see in December, a lot of our partner agencies close for the last 2 weeks of the month of December, so you'll see a drop there. And then also you'll see a little bit of a drop in the summer of 2023, and that was the last issuance of the pandemic EBT, which was the SNAP benefits that were issued when children were out of school. It was a lump sum that appeared on the EBT cards. So it, as I say, the demand at the partner agencies decreased during that time. So we can explain what those are. I would also say I've been at the food bank a long time. One time I made the mistake of saying I was there during the Great Depression. That was not when I was there. It was what is referred to as the Great Recession. And what we saw during that time was an incredible spike in food insecurity. We didn't see that with COVID. We're seeing it now. And that is because the things that were put in place for families have gone away now. So we are seeing that increase in food assistance. Again, when we're changing up a little bit, so we're going to put the policy discussion at the end. It's very hard for me to talk about this without kind of delving into that just a little bit. But the other thing that I wanted to mention that when everybody thinks about lobbying is really hard, something they don't want to do. That's not something that they can do. When you are talking about what you're seeing, when Tanya talks about what they're seeing at their food pantry, that's advocacy. That is sharing the story of what you're seeing or having others share their story. Lobbying is when there is a bill, you're talking to someone who can impact it, and you're wanting to tell them what your vote is. You can have that impact when you can influence those who are voting on these things that impact the people's lives that we are serving directly through our programs. A Congressional Management Foundation did a study where they met with the directors for senators and representatives in D.C. and asked them what was the most effective way of getting your vote on something. The most effective way was to hear from their constituents. That impacted how they voted. So that is very important that we all take action when something is coming up that you're hearing about, that you feel you're very strongly about. Contact them. The next most important thing that would impact a vote is when regional or local organizations reach out, because the staff knows that we touch the lives of many people and we are speaking for those people. So you will see us. We have at Second Harvest Food Bank on our website, we have an advocacy page where you can sign up to get our advocacy newsletters, sign up to get our advocacy alerts. When something is coming up that we are feeling very strongly about, that we will ask you to take action to reach out either to federal or to state. We're not doing a lot of work at the local level yet, even though we all know all politics is local. But again, we need your support. Your community needs your support. So again, just reaching out to those when there's something coming up, and there are going to be a lot of things coming up in the very near future that will be very helpful to have your voice for those that we serve.
Jan, talk a little bit. I think most people, when you hear the farm bills being talked about, most people don't realize that a lot of those programs actually come through the farm bill and not some other piece of legislation. And that farm bill, it hits periodically. It's not an entitlement program like some other things. Mm-hmm. You want to talk a little bit about that?
The farm bill is a massive piece of legislation. You're exactly right. It is what governs all agricultural as well as federal nutrition policy. The 85% of the funding, especially during COVID, we saw this, 85% of the funding in the Farm Bill goes to nutrition programs, the largest one being the SNAP, or Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, Food Nutrition Services, as it's known in North Carolina, and the way it used to be known was food stamps. So you're going to see the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, and also the Emergency Food Assistance Program is very critical. It's actually the cornerstone of the Emergency Food Assistance Program across this country. That is a program where the USDA purchases local products from U.S. growers, can only purchase from U.S. growers. It comes in through the Emergency Food Assistance Program and goes out into the counties. And it is, last year was 33% of the product that we distributed through Second Harvest Food Bank out to our partner agencies. Pre-COVID, that number was more like 25%. We are seeing a decrease in that. But also another program, a big program that's in that, is the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. And I am proud of myself for not using acronyms right now. I'm telling you. Because I usually refer to it as CSFP, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. But that is a program that provides once-a-month food box to seniors. And in North Carolina, it's not in every county in North Carolina, but again, it's a very important program to those who receive it. There are 8 other programs, nutrition programs in the Farm Bill that impact our work. The senior farmer market program is part of the Farm Bill. I can get in the weeds and go on, so I'm going to stop right there.
Let's take a hard left turn, and we're going to go kind of from big policy issues really into kind of what's happening in our community locally, and there's no better person to talk about that than Tanya Hairston. She has 17 years of retail and grocery experience, so she's in a perfect place with the food pantry at Crisis Control Ministries, and so you see and help people who are food insecure. You are absolutely on the ground. I did go try to do a little bit of stalking all of our panelists, and I couldn't find out anything about Jan. She has no Google. It's amazing. I know. Tanya didn't have a whole lot. She's got 2 cats and a dog. All right, see, there you go. And but I couldn't find a whole lot outside about that. So talk to us a little bit about the stories that you hear and see every day at the food pantry.
Normally, when someone comes in, when our neighbors are in crisis, you will see a little bit of a turmoil in their faces, but also a relief when they got to me. So the food pantry, when you are going to the grocery store, you know that the prices have went up. They are high. So to be relieved of having to buy groceries where you're getting something free for groceries, where you can take that money and pour it into your other bills, is a blessing. So what I'm seeing more, and I have my numbers as well, is just crisis upon crisis with normal things. If your car breaks down, then you're taking most of that money and you're putting it towards that car. That is taken away from your bill money, that's taken away from your mortgage money, that's taken away from family food time. We are getting to a situation where your pay is not going up, but the food is going up. Everything is going up. If you need some tires, that is a big, huge bill. So that's a crisis. So everything that we're seeing, and we have seen a spike in the last year. And I will give you some numbers. So in 22 through to 23, we helped 768 people, 768 people. In 23 to 24, that number jumped up to 1,048. For food value, from 22 to 23, it was $425,736. For 23 to 24, it is now, and y'all, I ain't got my glasses on, hold on. That is much better. It is $526,951. guys, we helped adults served, we helped 1,853 people 2022 to 2023, and from 23 to 24, that number jumped up to 2,464 people, okay? Now, the distribution went down, and I will tell you that we went from 188 to 170 because the donations that we are receiving has went down since the prices has went up, but the amount of people that we need to serve is skyrocketing. So it's been rough.
So Crisis Control Ministries does a lot of things other than food. So you've got
Yes,
other
sir.
things. And so talk a little bit about that and maybe how they
interact.
connect a little bit. And then also how you got into this work.
Okay, awesome. So Crisis Control also has pharmacy. We help with light bill, we help with water, and we help with rent and mortgage. You just come to us with a crisis and we can help you. And we also help you with food. How I got into this business is actually, I was the center manager at Fresh Market for about 2 years when I realized, and I'm just being honest, I was not happy with where I was in life. I felt like what I was doing was not giving any value, not only to myself, but to my Lord and Savior. So I have been looking for a job for a while, and I saw a position at Crisis Control for food pantry. And I thought that was God's calling to me because I literally was doing center manager. I was ordering food. I had been in retail. I've done Walmart. I've done Lowe's. I've done Dillard's. I've done so much retail. It was pretty much an easy transition. So I figured that I would go to the executive director of Crisis Control, Margaret, and I would shine in front of her and just tell her that her company needed a food pantry manager with passion and compassion, and she went for it.
I think she did very well with that. So thank you, Margaret. Well, very good. All right, we'll dive into it a little bit deeper when we come back with some other questions. But let me let's turn to Crystal Dixon. I did a little in my efforts to as an investigator. Crystal actually has her master's in public health that she got from East Carolina. And then she found herself at Wake, and she has a master's in sustainability. And so she's got kind of a broad set of background with that. She is a professor at Wake Forest in the Health and Exercise Science Department. And so she's going to talk a little bit about some key impacts of food insecurity on the health of our citizens and how those challenges affect different segments of the population in kind of an effort to help us get to some root cause kind of thing. So I'll turn it over to Crystal.
Great, thank you, Dudley, and thank you all so much for all the fantastic work you all are doing for our community. It's fantastic. I want to first start off by thanking Ellen Kirby for reaching out, and of course, Dr. Stephen Sills, you've met him maybe on the previous panel for the recommendation, and the planning team. Y'all have been kind. It was very kind to invite me to come here today in this timely conversation. Ellen, have to give her kudos, has been fantastic and a joy to get to know during the weeks following up to today's event. Most importantly, I applaud UPMC's leadership team for your commitment to raising awareness of systemic issues that are pummeling our Black and brown communities in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I also want to applaud all of you for being here because you're showing you're committed to solving the problem. There's a personal conviction within you that you want to contribute to how we can achieve health equity. So if I may, I'd like to open up with a personal story, if that's all right, followed by some general facts about systemic racism and how it connects to food insecurity, and on how it connects to climate crisis and public health. Is that okay with you all? Fantastic. All right. You can kick me out now if it's not. All right. So when I was younger, I vividly remember spending long, hot summers in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York. Anyone here from Brooklyn, New York? Okay, maybe neighbors a little bit. Oh, yes, of course, Ellen, that's right. Okay. And I remember the corner stores, the stench smell of the grind of the city, the abrupt waft of the warm subway fumes hitting me under my chin as I walked over the slotted grates that were carefully minted in these New York City streets. I would take many trips riding in my Nana's old turquoise Thunderbird to the local grocery store, Pathmark they called it, to do our grocery shopping. Ellen, you probably know very well about that. I remember walking into the automatic doors, tightly holding my Nana's hand while disappearing into the hustle and bustle of New Yorkers hastily grabbing their basic needs to survive through the week in typical New York fashion, quick, fast, and in a hurry. My Nana immigrated from Jamaica and graduated from NYU and Pratt Institute and was a trained dietitian. Working in the New York City public school system, I was exposed to the food system at an early age. I would follow her work daily to see her pridefully select the weekly breakfast and lunch menus for students. Several students visibly came to school hungry from the night before, while others were paying a modest fee to eat, a program we know today as the free and reduced lunch program. It became clear to me at an early age that many Black and brown students depended on the school system for their next meals. This was my first exposure to what is now identified as food insecurity. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, food insecurity is the economic and social conditions that limit access to adequate food. You hear it today. While there are now tiers of this, I understand, food insecurity is a public health crisis at any level. On a personal note, every evening my Nana would bring home government cheese, snack-sized cereal boxes left over from the day at school, ramen noodles for me and my siblings. Occasionally, she would light up her gas stove and cook us home-cooked meals. Being of Jamaican descent, I still remember the lingering smell of porridge in the mornings and hot batch of plantains in the evening. It was clear that my family was trying to make ends meet with the most affordable foods with the longest expiration dates, while proudly cooking some island favorites when the budget allowed. If we were food insecure, I couldn't tell. My privilege as a well-fed kid hid the reality of our circumstances. Thanks to donated cereal boxes, banana breads, cans of pineapple juice, and compliments of New York City public schools, and of course, food stamps, as Jan can understand that. I vividly remember my mom lost her food stamps because she made 10 cents above the income eligibility requirements after receiving a very modest raise from all of her hard work. These are examples of systemic challenges that families continue to face today when trying to feed their families. Dr. Kamara Phyllis Jones defines racism as a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on the social interpretation of how one looks, which we call race, that unfairly disadvantages some individuals in communities and unfairly advantages other individuals in communities, and saps the strength of the whole society through the waste of human resources. Jones and colleagues also define racism as a relegation of people of color of inferior status and treatment based on unfounded beliefs about innate inferiority, as well as unjust treatment and oppression of people of color, whether intended or not. While racism focuses on phenotype and implicit bias, systemic and structural racism is what I want to talk about today, which focuses on systems, policies, and practices. So I think Jan would appreciate. Vegan and colleagues define systemic racism, you may be wondering, as the involvement of whole systems. We're talking political, legal, economic, healthcare, education, and criminal justice, and the structures that uphold these systems. Dr. Eduardo Benigno Silva, a fantastic scholar at Duke University, professes that structural racism emphasizes the role of structures such as the laws, policies, and institutional practices, and entrenched norms that are the system's scaffolding. Are there any engineers here that may appreciate? Okay, fantastic. So I had to look up that word scaffolding. So what does he mean? So you may relate to this. So when you think of system scaffolding in the context of engineering, system scaffolding is the type of scaffold composed of modularized, pre-engineered components that do not require the use of traditional steel fittings to fix piece one to another. Instead, each component is specifically designed to interlock together directly like a jigsaw puzzle. Does that make any sense to you? Because I'm still trying to figure it out. Nonetheless, this actually is what structural racism is and how it operates. So you may be wondering, what are the origins of structural racism and systemic racism and how it relates to food insecurity? I am glad you asked. The short and although not exhaustive answer is redlining. Who remembers the redlining exhibit that was here? I believe, oh, fantastic. I know Ellen mentioned you all did that. It's coming, okay, the undesigned redline. Okay, fantastic. That's an amazing exhibit, and I hope you all come to see that. But for those who may be unfamiliar until June, redlining was a form of government-sanctioned segregation that was embedded into law to help reduce the risk that government-backed loans would default. Neighborhoods in over 200 cities across the U.S. were assessed to determine if neighborhoods were secure enough to take advantage of federal loans. Some of y'all may remember this. As a result, maps were color-coded to identify black versus white neighborhoods. So for example, high-risk lenders were outlined in red, neighborhoods deemed declining were outlined in yellow, and neighborhoods found to be best and desirable were outlined in green and blue, respectively. So that's what the criteria were for the redlining. This mapping system produced a hierarchy of credit risk rating that systematically advantaged certain neighborhoods and populations while disadvantaging others, which has had far-reaching effects today. The system has and still has severe implications as it relates to the wealth gap today. For example, according to Brookings, homes in black neighborhoods are valued roughly 21% to 23% below what their valuations would be in non-black neighborhoods. So now we're scaffolding wealth gap with food insecurity as well. The cost of the devaluation across the 113 metro areas in the U.S. is at $162 billion. So that is owed to many families across the countries. So supermarket redlining is another example, which we're getting into Tanya's space here, or it's the intentional divestment of resources and affordable healthy foods from black and brown low-income communities. It's happening today. So if you see a Publix or if you see a Trader Joe's, it sends the message, oh, this is a desirable area, this is a great place to raise my kids. And so economically, that has been caught on with our supermarkets, which has led to food deserts in many respects. These data continue to show that when you overlay redlining maps with environmental injustices, wealth gaps, health disparities, and poverty-ridden neighborhoods, these same neighborhoods are also experiencing food insecurity. So I hope you're seeing the tracking here and the themes that all these neighborhoods are having multi-layered impacts in public health. So as a sustainability strategist, I would be remiss if I did not connect how the climate impacts food insecurity. And I'm almost done, Dudley. I'm closing here, no. Globally speaking, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports that the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases released from human activity are at the highest level in history right now and are contributing to widespread impacts on human health and natural systems. And one of those systems are the food system, believe it or not. According to the EPA, climate change can disrupt food availability, reduce access to food, and affect food quality. For example, recently CNN Climate just reported that 24 million people in South Africa, we're going to bring it close to home in a moment, face hunger, malnutrition, water scarcity due to drought and floods. Circling back to New York, a recent study reported that the Bronx has the highest rate of food insecurity and diet-related diseases. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's report recently released, climate change has caused changes in precipitation, timing, and the intensity, and has directly impacted crop development. This is becoming a global issue. And one of the things about the report that was found is that climate change is very likely to affect global, regional, and local food security by disrupting food availability, decreasing access to food, and making utilization more difficult. Climate change has also directly impacted processing, storage, transportation, etc. So from a public health perspective, it's important to note that food insecurity has been positively associated with high blood pressure. For example, 39% of residents in the South Bronx, as mentioned earlier, have high blood pressure. So not only are you not having access to food, it's affecting your chronic conditions. Also, extreme heat, indoor air quality, and food insecurity create a multi-layered health crisis in homes today. Extreme heat, if you didn't know, which is really interesting, kills more people in the U.S. each year than any other weather-related disaster. I often say that trees follow wealth. In fact, research has shown that shaded surfaces can be as much as 20 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than unshaded areas at peak temperature. So when you think about those underserved communities that are on those red line maps you'll learn about, and the in poverty and the ones that are impacted by food insecurity, they're also likely not having a lot of trees in the neighborhood. It's a whole nother conversation. So tree canopy, summer temperatures, particulate matter 2.5, and income all overlap in the same segregated Black and brown and indigenous redline communities who are experiencing food insecurity. So when I think back to my Nana, to her gas stove, research has shown that natural gas stoves can release carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, and other harmful pollutants, believe it or not, into the air, decreasing indoor air quality. But I don't know about you, I love a good, nice-looking gas stove, right? There's nothing like a good gas stove. But research are coming out talking about that. So this intersectionality of climate change, the wealth gap, indoor air quality, food insecurity, among other systemic factors, all have severe public health implications here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. As I conclude my comments, it's important to understand that redlining has played a pivotal role in various systemic challenges that are pervasive in Black and brown and indigenous communities. We're talking zoning ordinances, permitting, among other economic and systemic factors, are contributing to food insecurity. And this is the thing I want to end on, that this reality is not due to laziness of Black or brown indigenous folks or not pulling up themselves with their bootstraps, because I often wonder, even if that was the case, how would you do this without any boots, right? This is a complex system of economic oppression that has been ingrained into the fabric of this country. Our laws, policies, and practices have normalized this assault on humanity in ways that are inhumane. Further, food insecurity has a rippling effect on future generations. I'll end here in saying that, in fact, according to the Feeding America, 29% of Black children, as you all may know, lived in food insecure households. There's 1 in 3 Black children without reliable access to food. And a combination of food insecurity and systemic racism in our healthcare systems have created an infant mortality crisis impacting Black babies and mothers today, which is continuing to increase. So we must act now to save our communities who continue to serve as casualties while navigating these systems. Our communities deserve a right to their full life expectancy, not to endure the crippling effects of a broken system designed to advantage some over others. The solution starts with using our platforms as we're doing today, which is fantastic, by the way, and raising awareness of systemic inequities. Thank you all for being part of the solution today. I look forward to our conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Crystal. That was fantastic. And that's exactly what I would have expected when you take a sustainability expert and a public health expert and you bring it all together. And so we'll come back and talk about some of the specific kind of public policy things in a second. But that was also a great segue to our next panelist, Dr. Kyle Luth. He was the funnest to go look out and find out about. He has his PhD in parasitology. From Wake Forest. He published, so his dissertation was scale-dependent something in molecular and ecological patterns of, never mind. Okay, anyway. But what Dr. Luth does do, and I think it's a perfect segue, is he has worked at one of the most amazing places at the Enterprise Center, and he has built a little paradise, a little mecca out there that's feeding a lot of people. And so Dr. Luth, you were the manager for 5 years at Simon's Garden, which was one of the largest and most successful community food gardens in Winston-Salem Forsyth County, and it really is in a place that we would call a food desert, and it's in a fairly poor area of this county. Talk a little bit about how the garden serves the community and the neighborhoods, and just describe the programs that you've offered and how they've enhanced the accessibility of food.
Sure. Thank you, Dudley. And thank you, Ellen, for the invitation. And thank you all for being here to learn more about what is a real problem for a lot of people who live in Winston-Salem community. So Simon's Community Garden is one of 5 initiatives under the umbrella of S.G. Atkins CDC, Community Development Corporation, located at 1922 South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Carol Davis is the director of the center and an incredible person. So if you have had the opportunity to meet her, I'm sure that it was a wonderful experience for you. She is doing a lot of really great work. If you haven't met her, please come and see what's going on at SGAC and CDC. It's doing a lot of really fantastic stuff. So the 5 prongs that it seeks to improve community, especially along the MLK corridor, it is under the umbrella of Winston-Salem State University. And so they have a shared goal of improving the area along the MLK corridor, the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive corridor. So first-time homeowners, one of the programs is buying lots that have homes on them or do not have homes on them, and then improving those lots and then making them accessible to first-time homeowners who live in that area. So this speaks to these issues of devaluation of properties in predominantly Black and brown communities, and so this is an initiative to combat that. In addition, there's an entrepreneurial space, which is called the Enterprise Center, and I am now working with the Winston-Salem Women's Business Center, which is run out of that. There are also 40 small business entrepreneurs who work in that space, as well as 9 food entrepreneurs. Another arm is the shared use kitchen. So it was the first certified shared use kitchen in Forsyth County. And so folks that have catering businesses can prepare food in that space and then take it out to cater different events. So first-time home ownership, access to spaces for entrepreneurs, predominantly Black and brown entrepreneurs, and then the shared use kitchen. There's also an event space in that area, or in the building, where you can rent the space out and do events and those types of things. And then there is the garden, which is has become my baby, was my baby for a long time. I've now handed it over to very capable hands, but I'm here mostly to talk about that, so let's get into that. So Simon's Community Garden is a 1 acre, a little over an acre, fenced-in garden space. Its history goes back about 13 years. When they developed, so SGAC and CDC is in the old Boys and Girls Club that's located there on MLK, and was converted then by Carol and some others to be SGAC and CDC, and there's this big grassy area in the back that no one knew what to do with. And so the current manager, Lorraine Mortis, was like, well, let's turn it into a garden. And so community was on board, and Lorraine, if you know her, is scrappy, and she was going to make it happen, and it happened. It started out being only in the ground, so we tilled up, and, well, I wasn't there yet, but they tilled up, they planted in the ground, and that was how it went for a couple of years, and then they transitioned to raised garden beds. In 2019, I started there, and there were about 35 raised garden beds. All of them were 4 by 12 feet. So over the next couple of years, we've now grown it to over 100 raised beds. There's a fully accessible, ADA accessible growing area that has 12 table beds. 3 of them are designed for folks in wheelchairs. I worked with a local carpenter to design those, and then I build build all sorts of beds. And so we built them and put them in. We were able to subdivide the garden into a space that has around 40 beds for community members to grow produce, and then the other side is dedicated to our on-site farmers market that we have every 2nd, 4th, and 5th Saturday of the month. And then we were also able to install a North Carolina pollinator garden with the intention to not only attract pollinators that then benefit the produce that we're growing, but also to act as a beautiful space in the garden. One of my biggest missions when I took over was to make this space not just a garden. I think gardens are incredibly powerful and impactful, so I'm not trivializing the role that they play, but not everyone connects with gardening, not everyone connects with growing food. So we wanted to have it be multi-purpose, so we could bring in more community members and more people would benefit from the space. So we installed that native area, which is just gorgeous. It was planned to bloom at different times of year, so no matter when you go there, you're going to see all sorts of different colors, and it's just really wonderful. We installed also a couple of large growing beds that are dedicated for herbs, and so we grow together herbs that can be used together for various things. And education is a big part of my existence, and so everything that we do, we try to also make it an opportunity to educate. And so we can use the herb garden, the native area, to educate community about those resources as well. And we've recently been able to install a stage. We were able to, through some grant funding, to fully electrify the garden. And so now we have a space where we can host community events and do all sorts of wonderful things that bring people, whether they're interested in gardening or not, into the space. In terms of programming, the original vision of the space was to educate and to increase access to food. Some of the panelists have talked about access to food through supermarkets, through different chains that for folks like myself who live in Ardmore, I can't throw a rock without hitting a grocery store, right? It's not that case in East Winston and in Southeast Winston. So there is a Food Lion by the garden, not too far from there, and there is no other grocery store for over 2 miles, right? So the reality in a space where you don't have access to healthy food, nor do you have access to reliable transportation to get the food, if you want to know what unreliable transportation feels like, take the bus somewhere, right? You may never get there, right? And then there's, speaking of policies and things, right, 2 bags per person. So if you're doing shopping, how are you going to do your shopping? Are you going to take multiple trips? Are you going to spend 3, 4, 5 hours of your day going back and forth to the grocery store to get healthy things? Unlikely. So you might go to a corner market, right? And you might get processed, highly caloric dense food without nutrient density, right? So I'll get on a soapbox here, but part of what we were trying to do was increase access to healthy food. And so we educate, we train. If you don't have any background in gardening, it doesn't matter because we can help you and you will be successful. But then we also produce such an abundance that we're able to then make it accessible to community. And so some of the programs that we are making that produce accessible to the community, I mentioned the farmers market already, so we try to keep prices down. We are trying to endeavor to increase accountability, and so we do have a modest fee for accessing that produce, but we also partner with the food bank on lots of occasions that are able to distribute more than we can grow for free as well, as a part of that program. We also have a Cooking in the Garden program, which has been really fantastic. So we invite a chef from the Shared Use Kitchen, and through grant funding, we're able to provide them a stipend, and we're able to get all the ingredients that we need. Either we grow them or we purchase them, and then everyone is able to participate in a hands-on cooking class for free. And it started out as just a demonstration, and then over the years has evolved into a fully hands-on cooking experience. It's wonderful. We had 8 of them last year. Over 40 people showed up to every one of them. So you walk away with recipe cards and with any produce that we have that we can give, and the knowledge of how to cook healthy meals using a limited number of ingredients and easily accessible ingredients. And another flagship program of the garden is called Sizzlin' Summer Nights. If you're a jazz fan, I partnered with a really talented local musician, Nathaniel Ward. I don't know if you maybe have run across him. He plays at Sika and at some other places around town. But we put on a series where we would start every event with a healthy movement activity, so Zumba or hip-hop line dance or yoga or whatever. Each week was different. And then for 2 hours we would have jazz music, and then we would have local vendors, local community agencies could have tables and let people know about what they're doing. It was a free event, food was served, and tours of the garden and all those good things. And so what we have endeavored to do is make a space where it's not just one thing, right? It's a space where you can access food if that's your need and that's your interest. It's a space where you can engage with community if that is your interest, right? It's a space where you can nurture your mind, body, soul, all that good stuff. So we've been working really hard. We really love what we do. Our impacts have grown every year. And so we're kind of on the other side of some of this, and that we're kind of in the trenches and really trying to make accessible access to food sovereignty through growing your own food or through having it fresh and organically grown and affordable.
Thank you, Dr. Leith. That was terrific. a lot of thoughts ran through my mind as you were talking about what's going on, at the Enterprise Center. Not the least of which is, Winston-Salem State Center for Economic Mobility has done some amazing work, and I know it's kind of all integrated into that. I'm proud that the county's been provided some grants and gotten a lot of partnerships with Carol Davis over there. The other thing, which is a little random, is, I woke up this morning, because my wife and I live on a little small farm, and I woke up and we raised chickens, and I went, and my breakfast was this amazing omelet, and my asparagus is coming up. It was amazing, and I cut my asparagus, and I'd literally gone out and gotten it and walked back in the house and cut it up and ate this omelet, and the only thing that didn't come off our land was the cheese that I put on it. And I thought, I am the richest person in the world. It was amazing. And so just the power of eating that way is absolutely remarkable. So, but let me kind of shift over. I heard a couple of things from the group as we were going through it in a couple of different places, and one of them is what's called the benefits cliff, right? And there's probably a variety of perspectives about the benefits cliff, which is essentially when somebody starts making, it's a disincentive to make more money because the minute you make the money, these benefits drop. We see it most profoundly, frankly, with child care subsidy. The child care subsidy is one that's paid at a very high level, but when it stops, within just a few dollars, it drops out. And as you know, child care is a huge, very expensive thing, and it really does create a disincentive. But let me just throw it out. Anybody want to comment on before we dive into sort of an open question about other policy changes that you think need to be made? Anybody want to talk about that? I mean, Crystal, you talked a little bit from a very personal perspective about it. Don't be shy.
I was actually leading on Jan's perspective on this one. I can tell you from experience, it's not a good feeling. I remember back in the day, it was in the booklets, now it's in the debit card, I understand. But I think that's just an example of a systemic barrier to addressing some of these issues. It doesn't get to this root cause of poverty, but it certainly provides an immediate need to literally live the next day. And I think it's a both and. I think a lot of times we spend a lot of time just responding temporarily to solutions, and we're not looking at the systems and the policies and the structures that are creating the inequities to begin with. So I'd love to know maybe Jan or others' perspective on maybe how much you've seen that and things of that nature.
At the food bank, I want to recognize also Mark Madrigal right here on the front row. Mark is part of our advocacy board committee. And benefits cliff is one of our policy priorities, but we also recognize it is a long term. It is not going to be something that we solve this year or anytime. It's a very difficult, it's a lot of programs tied together. And again, you're right, Crystal, that we see people refuse raises, refuse a promotion because they know it's going to, what they make, the net will be far less for them. And again, it's really a lot of policies are going to have, a lot of agencies are going to have to work together to address this issue. And again, we are in this for the long haul, but that's what it's going to be, a long term. Sorry, I don't have a better answer, but.
Tanya, did you have anything that you want to talk about? I mean, because if you think about the poor, if you think about folks who come to your facility for needs, they may very well they very well may be employed, and they are trying their best. Most people that are on food stamps are employed, and so they are trying their best, and programs like yours really are that thing that helps people get to a better place.
We have that, but we also have health issues as well. So even when you are employed and you do get food stamps, and most of everyone's food stamps dropped. So they had a severe decline, which is why they hit our food pantry so hard. Once again, your pay increase is not happening, either by just refusing it because you have to stay at a certain level, or because some companies are not giving raises. They are at a freeze for a raise, so you are not getting any more food, or any more money into your paychecks, and you always see a lot of health issues that are happening with that. Their heart attacks, strokes are on the rise. So you have most of my people who are coming in, and we serve 63% of African Americans. 63% of my clients are African Americans, 32% are Hispanic, and 22% are Caucasians. They are coming in with already problems with health. And so they have been pulled out of work, and sometimes they lose their job because they have been out of work so long. A job cannot hold your position open while you're dealing with a heart attack or a stroke. That is a long time for you to heal. So we are seeing not people saying no about getting a raise. They want a raise. They want to get that money, but they're not having that opportunity to get that, and they need those benefits that we have to help them with the water, to help them with the food, to help them with their pharmacy prices, to help them with their rent or mortgage. Because rent and mortgage is going up. It's escalating at a ridiculous rate, especially here in Forsyth County. So you are not being able to pay your mortgage. You are not being able to pay your light bill because you are running your light bill at a certain amount. And I don't know if you guys have paid attention, but the light bill has went up. It is going to absolutely crazy expenses nowadays. You're not doing anything different, but it's still going ridiculously high. So what I am seeing is more of people just not being able to make any of those ends meet.
Dr. Luth, I saw you nod when Tanya was talking about a few things. Anything you want to add?
No, fantastic.
Dudley, if I will, I have one quick thing to mention. I'm curious to know your thoughts. I think it's interesting how there's also pushback against the SNAP program. But the irony of that is I understand across the state of North Carolina, 45% of folks receiving SNAP are non-Hispanic white. And when you think about the racial aspect of that, no one really knows that. So I think it's good to keep that in mind, that your data were different, which I learned about. But I recognize SNAP serves those who most people would arguably say, oh, this is worth the investment, just to put a seed out there on that.
And certainly the undocumented population that's in this community wouldn't be eligible for food stamp benefits. So, all right. And just an observation, it's interesting because the benefits cliff is one of those sort of very difficult issues. From a public policy perspective, you want folks to be employed. You want them to have all the incentives to go to work and earn and see their incomes grow. And it's one of those that is sort of embedded in, it's working against sort of the stated public policy. And so it's why it's such a difficult, it's a difficult issue to try to get your arms around. So let me kind of open it back up to sort of where we were. Back to Jan, if I can, a little bit. And so, Jan, specifically, talk a little bit about key public policies that you got into it a little bit early on, but key public policies that need to be changed. Specifically, who folks in this audience can work to try to influence, and maybe even perhaps what role the church has. And then the follow-up question, to all of you, it really is. Ways that we can encourage, the city and the county and our community to do more. So.
Okay, thank you. Also, on page 5, in addition to the graph that was there were also some of the top things that we at the food bank are considering. It's not all of our policy priorities, but just an example of some of them. As we've already discussed, the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is as I said, is a comprehensive piece of legislation that is to be reauthorized every 5 years. The last one was in 2018, And actually, the Farm Bill expired of September 30th of 2023, but through the negotiations during the government shutdown negotiations, it was extended through September 30th of 2024. These are all going to be on a federal fiscal year. With what we are seeing in Washington right now, what we're hearing, there are 3 scenarios for the next Farm Bill. It will either happen before they go home for the summer. In August, it will happen. If it doesn't, it will be after the election, or if not then, it will be pushed to 2025. Again, when you don't have a reauthorization, you don't have improvements in programs that need to be made. We know there are changes that need to be made, but when we don't have that reauthorization of it, it's not addressed. In the Farm Bill, as we've already discussed, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program is there. We are pushing hard to protect and strengthen that program. It is always under attack in that program. And one of the things is we want the benefits to keep up with the rising cost of groceries. That is our top line priority for the Farm Bill, for those benefits to match, not necessarily match, but to keep up with that, to be adjusted for inflation. What the benefits are based on is called the Thrifty Food Plan. In the last Farm Bill, it was mandated that it be updated every 5 years with each new Farm Bill. And it was, during this administration, USDA did adjust that. The last time it had been adjusted was 1978. Yes. So we need to protect the Farm Bill. We need to make sure those good things that are in there stay in there. The Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP, again, it provides a majority of the food, not a majority, around 30%, 25 to 30% of the food we distribute each year. That if that funding doesn't keep up, we're going to see a decrease in that. And as Tanya has already said, we're seeing, seeing a decrease in the food being donated to us at Second Harvest Food Bank. With the cuts that we have seen through programs, we used to budget $400,000 a year for food purchase. Due to the increase in what we're seeing in demand, the cut in federal programs that we are seeing, the decrease that's coming in there, the rising cost. This year at Second Harvest Food Bank, our food purchase budget is $4.25 million. That is not something we can sustain, but we are doing that through our generous donors right now. Sorry, my long COVID will kick in when you least expect it to do. Water won't even take care of it. It's just one of those things. And I had COVID in 2022, and it still is hanging with me. As I say, the Farm Bill is very important. There's the federal nutrition programs that are in there are critical to helping those, our food assistance program, but also allowing people to choose the foods that they want. One of the things that's been discussed right now with the Farm Bill is limiting the purchases that can be made only to nutrient-dense foods, taking away their choice and we feel that is wrong. Again, it's very targeted, as Crystal has mentioned. So the other thing, with this, USDA has really started to addressing in my opinion, USDA was rife with discrimination, and they are addressing some of those issues. But right now, even in the food program, we have 5 U.S. territories. 2 receive SNAP, 3 receive a block grant called the Nutritional Assistance Program. One of them is Puerto Rico. When COVID hit, the SNAP program can expand as it's supposed to do, and it can contract. A nutritional assistance program is a block grant. It could not do that. That's inequity. We need to correct these things. Then again, that's a priority for us. I'm going to take my time now. Y'all are going to be sorry you gave me the microphone back. Child nutrition reauthorization. This is where your school lunch program, school breakfast is located. The last reauthorization was signed in 2010. It has just continued just through the administrative, the fact that they do include, they included in the budget. No improvements to those programs are made. That's also where your summer feeding is funded through. It's also where the child and adult care food program. So when you see low-income daycares, that is how their meals are compensated, but it's also adult daycares that receive funding for their meals there. We don't see any improvement. We need a new child nutrition reauthorization also. And one of the things that really helped during COVID was the expanded child tax credit that was passed, part of the, American Response. They just had way too many names during that time. But in 2021, we saw child poverty drop to its lowest level in decades. 2 years later, after 2021, it had more than doubled. And I will say the House has passed a bill, H.R. 7204, the American Family and Worker Tax Relief Act of 2024. They passed it on January 31st, and it does bring back the child tax credit. It not only brings it back, it builds in increases so that by 2025, the refund would be $2,000 per child. However, the Senate hasn't acted on it. We need to have that policy put in place. We know that during that time, during 2021, those payments were made monthly for half the year. We know that people, when households were interviewed, they used that to pay their rent. They used that to buy food. They used that to pay medical bills. It was not frivolously spent. It was used in the manner in which it was intended. There are more, as I say, that we're looking at the federal level, but I also want to mention a couple at the state level. The food banks, we are very fortunate in North Carolina that the Feeding America food banks do receive funding in the state budget through the General Assembly. This year, they did hear our ask, and they doubled the funding that we are receiving. But we still, again, with the need we're seeing, we need additional more funding for that. At the state level, we are really seeing attacks on the SNAP program, or FNS as it's known here. Again, there are state options that the federal government allows states to take, and we are looking at some very harmful ones being proposed with that. When people, I won't go down that path because I really get in the weeds on that one. But also one of the things that we are part of the statewide coalition on is the School Meals for All, NC. And that is, as we saw during COVID, remember everyone had their meals free at school. Well, when I think it was last school year, they went back to having to do the free lunch, apply for it, and also the copay or reduced price for those. The General Assembly prior to this had also would reimburse the copay or cover the copays in the state. But with the state budget being caught up in, into some discussion, when schools started back, the copays were back in place. So you had free lunch, but those households that got the reduced price were having to pay that again. We saw school meal debt skyrocket again. But the General Assembly, when they passed the budget, did authorize the covering of the reduced price or the copays and made it recurring. So we won't go through that situation again. So that was a win for us for this year. However, we are still pushing for School Meals for All to take that stigma away. We know that the school meals are some of the healthiest meals, and I'm sure Crystal could tell us stories on those with her grandmother, but those are some of the healthiest meals that children do receive. They come to school hungry. They're not going to learn. They're waiting for lunch. So we need to have those meals free for them. I do want to mention we have had some wins in the last year. We did get Medicaid expansion in the state of North Carolina, and that is a huge thing to celebrate. Also, one of the things that there, as part of Medicaid, the Healthy Opportunity pilots that we're doing in the state of North Carolina, medically tailored meals. We're hearing more about food as medicine, food as medicine. And we're actually doing a pilot at Second Harvest Food Bank through Novant, through a grant they received, where your doctor, if you need a special diet, the doctor will prescribe meals. And at our Providence Kitchen is through our registered dietitians and working with the chefs, the meals that are going out are medically tailored for the family, for the person that is receiving that meal. You're also seeing produce boxes that are being that are being provided to households that also help them with their diet, with their chronic disease that they have. So we do have some good things to celebrate, but we have a long way to go on policy. I'll close out my part with saying, in October of 2020, I was working remotely, sitting at my dining room table, and on listening to a webinar. And it was a professor from University of North Carolina who, I don't like the first word she used. I'd like to change it, but I will quote her. Her comment was, "Charity is not enough. Charity cannot do what can be done more effectively and more efficiently through policy." COVID showed us this. That was our pilot. Food insecurity did not rise during COVID because of the policies that were put in place. So I'm going to say, please know that your voice is power. Please reach out to your elected officials and let them know how you feel about these issues. Again, go to our website. We do have our policies there. Sign up for our newsletters to let you know what our stance is, and if we're asking for an action to be taken on a certain bill. Thank you.
It was so hard for Jan to not do all that at the beginning. I said, save it to the end and it'll be perfect. So thank you, Jan. That worked out really well. We do need to go to questions, but before I do that, any of the rest of the panelists want to talk about anything from a public policy perspective, a charge around how the folks in this audience can try to make a difference?
Donations.
Okay.
We're there at Crisis Control. We just applied to be a healthy food pantry. We are very excited about that. When I first came to Crisis Control, the biggest thing that I saw when we had our clients come in, our neighbors, is the choices that they were making was based upon how they have lived all their lives. Now, my question is always to each person, do you have any dietary restrictions? Because we separate the no sodium items. We work on having, from our donations, we make sure that the healthy items are out there for each of our people, but our donations is low and our need is high. We have a tremendous amount of people who have children who do not have food. And they're not getting any raises, guys. They're not getting anything else. They need food, and we need donations. If we don't have it, we do purchase, and we do have other organizations that we partner with. We partner with Food Lion, Trader Joe's, Harris Teeter, so we do get donations from them, but it's still not enough. So my biggest thing that I can say is we have a gift of the month. We put it out there for all of our organizations, all of our churches. We partner with all of our churches, and we ask for those donations so we can help our clients in need.
Thank you.
I'll just want to add with the donations, we do have on our website preferred items to donate. So we do go more, as I say, so that you know the healthy items that we need. So just wanted to mention that with donations.
I'll definitely second comments that were just made about donation from Tanya. I think I was on the, I don't usually talk about this because it was some challenges with it, but I was on the Robert Wood Johnson Anti-Racism Consortium. And the purpose of that was, it was about 15 of us selected across the country to consult with Robert Wood Johnson how to be less anti-racist in their philanthropic efforts. So what I would say is, along with what Tanya was saying, if you're applying for grants, partnering with grassroots organizations, as we discussed today, is really important. I'll call out Dr. Kathy Poling. She's a pediatrician at the Wake Forest Baptist Medicine. We just met at Dojo's Donuts, if you've been there. It's so good. We ate, and I was so impressed with Kathy because Kathy received a large grant. It was like $1.5 million. And she said, Crystal, you know what? 80% of that went to the grassroots organization. I said, what? I said, Kathy, this is music to my ears. She said, yes. I leveraged my influence in the medical school, my position, my title. I secured the monies, and I elevated and scaled up an organization doing the work as we heard today. So leveraging perhaps the church or partnerships that you're a part of, organizations you're a part of, and partnering with local communities is essential to what was just shared about. If you can't give personally, I think using your position in grants is another opportunity you can do that. And she's going to change their life from that one decision. And guess what? She gave her power to the community to make the decision, not her. It's a whole nother conversation. But that's one thought I would give, Dudley.
Fantastic. And since Ellen, I'm looking at Ellen, and I know she wants me to say, and it kind of relates to Kyle's work as well, that the opportunity to go work in the garden there at Crossnor there's a ton of work. All that food goes to the food bank, and I know there's opportunities there. Kyle, do you want to talk about opportunities?
Yeah, I was just going to, add to the wonderful suggestions that have been made in terms of action steps. We can have a cooking in the garden class for free where we teach people how to cook healthy meals, but if they can't afford to then go and get those healthy ingredients to use them, right, it's a nonstop, right? Non-start, nonstop. Right? So without these policy changes, without you putting your voice forward and making it clear that this is important, that we make food, healthy food accessible to everyone, right, then these organizations that are doing wonderful work are going to be hamstrung, right from the beginning. And I think another thing that's really important, there's lots of gardens across Winston. Unfortunately, they're not as connected as I would like them to be, I think that if we connected all the gardens, we would have even more of an impact. But a lot of those gardens that are doing good work, the Second Harvest Food Bank Garden at Crossnor, even Wake Forest's campus garden that then is used for the campus kitchen outreach. And then several little pocket gardens located all through the community are typically restrained by capacity, right? There are a couple of people who are really dedicated to the work and who essentially die out there doing the work that other people are not doing with them, right? So if you are someone who enjoys gardening or you know someone who does, right, one of the easiest things you can do that increases capacity of these small growing spaces exponentially is show up and donate some time. If you don't have money, it doesn't matter. If you have sweat equity, that is what leverages these gardens into greater capacity. Right? Because I'll tell you, 5 years I did it, and I worked with the Gardening Angels at the Boys and Girls Club off of Reynolds Park Road for a number of years as well. There's a lot of people out here who are working really, really hard to make these things happen, and they're tired, and they're burnt out, right? And they're trying, they have the passion, but they don't have the energy. Right? So if you can, a little bit of support here and a little bit of support there can make a world of difference. It's not going to change all the policy and things, but it's at least going to help increase the capacity of those green spaces that are doing the important work of making produce available to folks.
And I'll make a pitch. The county, 10 years ago, maybe longer than that, we did a food policy study, and one of the upshots of that was a locally funded community garden position, which was Mary Jack Brennan at the time. And so we still have that position funded. It's been tricky to keep filled, but it's in cooperative extension. I'll take some note back to work to connect the gardens better, and I know we need to do that. Fantastic. Well, we're approaching time. Let's open it up for questions. Suzanne, you want to?
Nicole has a microphone in the back. No, she doesn't. Okay. All right. Yeah, we've got an extra one here too. Yeah, and it's on. Okay, so we've got Time for a few questions. Libet.
Regarding the cliff, how many electoral cycles, and forgive my ignorance, how many electoral cycles will it take to develop a sliding scale approach so that 10 cents doesn't cut out your child care? It decreases it by 10 cents, that kind of thing. And another thing, folks, have you walked into your convenience store? I stopped in a convenience store the other day to kill some time, get some work done on my car. A 12-ounce can of Cheerwine was $1.09. A larger than that can of beer was $1.59. Every other soft drink in that store, 16 plus ounces, was 2 for $3 plus. And the beer were all almost less than that or equal. And I was like, excuse me, no wonder we're going to hell.
Okay, not sure there was a question there, but certainly there was a comment. So. Yeah, maybe a
benefit
rhetorical
scale.
question. So, but Marilyn right behind you. Yeah.
The benefits scale.
Jan, do you want to
Okay.
respond to the?
Yeah.
I would say, I know that we've already talked about how 10 cents can change, but if there is a program that does have a slope, it really is SNAP, that it tapers off as you increase more. So, but it is the only one. And again, it's not enough of a slope, but it is the only one right now that has a slope.
Yeah, and I would, I think one of the issues is that, the nutrition stuff is in the Department of Agriculture, where, all the other health and human services the silos that exist both on the federal and the state level are absolutely infuriating. And so it's one of those things that I think is tremendously solvable, makes all the sense to solve. Bipartisan, the bipartisan solution's there, you just can't get it done, so.
The desire's not.
Yeah. Well.
Not at that level.
Right, well, and I think it's just the confusion around the complexity of everything. I mean, I think there's good people that serve, but it's just not a simple problem. And I think there's going to be a merger of, it's going to take tremendous leadership, probably at the executive level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, next question.
I just wanted to appreciate that we got these little yellow cards about how we can be advocates for change. But I also wanted to mention the United Methodist Church's General Board of Church and Society has an advocacy program too. And this is really neat, that when something comes before Congress, like the Farm Bill, I remember one time they were trying to cut WIC out of it. And what will happen is you will, depending on how you sign up, will get a text or an email that says, this bill is coming, contact your representatives now. And so if you just go to the website, umcjustice.org, we ought to be able to remember that, right? umcjustice.org, and on the menu, you want to select advocacy. And when you sign up, like I said, you'll either get a text or an email. And when you say yes, they immediately take you to your representative. So you can do one, and then when you send that, you get the next one. You can send that one, both on text and email. So you don't even have to look your representative up if you're confused about that. But they immediately take you to the right address or to the right number for texting or calling. Calls are preferred, but emails are also a good thing.
Thank you, Marilyn. And in case you didn't have a pen, could not grab it quickly enough, on page 6 of your handout is a list of, easily a dozen websites that represent our UMC organizations, including the one that Marilyn just mentioned, as well as all of the websites of all of our panelists. So on your stapled handout, that's on page 6 of that. So, okay.
And I would say that most, even on our website, you just click on a link and it will take you to how to connect with your U.S. congressman. State's a little bit harder to do, but again, it's going to go by your zip code to connect you with whoever. And I think, as I say, most large organizations now do have that. A lot of times, it's just a letter that you just have to sign your name to. I would just encourage you to add a little personal something to it to make your letter just a tad bit different from a form letter. Again, doesn't take rewriting the whole letter, just add one little personal, something from you on it. But they do count the letters, they count the phone calls. There's someone working in those offices that their job is doing nothing but to make hash marks about what issues are getting the phone calls today.
I would just add to that for the phone calls, a lot of times they'll provide a script if you're nervous about talking on the phone, which some of us don't like to do it. And you can just read the script and they take your phone call and just say thank you. So it's pretty easy to do.
Okay, thank you, Nicole, for that additional information. Any other questions from the audience? Well, yes, we have a question up front. Thank you. Nicole will bring you a microphone.
To piggyback on the First Lady with the difference between the EBT and the SNAP, why is one is a sliding scale and the other one is not? So that way we can be educated on the difference between the two. Maybe we can understand why one is not a sliding scale and the other one is.
On SNAP, well, EBT is SNAP. I mean, that's where your benefits come. I'm not sure why the other programs don't have that. SNAP has always been that way. When you talk about life stories, Crystal, I'm not going to put the year on it, but I will tell you, and you can all look it up to see when it happened. When I graduated college, I was the very first food stamp worker in the county I went to work in. And even then, it was that your benefits gradually went off. Tapered off with that. So, as I say, I'm not sure why it's the only program that way, but it was designed that way.
Yeah, so one of the things that a number of groups in the community do around some anti-racism efforts is the poverty simulations, and a lot of you in this room have probably done those. And if you want a very crystal clear experience around what attend one of those poverty simulations.
Please contact us. We can do that. For Crisis Control does offer that poverty simulation for any groups. And we would love to come in and do it. And I know you guys have done it. But if you want to do it again, we are available. Okay?
Okay. We're going to invite our senior minister, Glenn Kinkin, to come forward and just close us for this evening. But thank you again. And we'll let Glenn pray us out of here. And don't forget to tear off page 7 of your handout and give us your information, your contact information to be a part of a follow-up team if you'd like to.
First of all, let us say thanks to these folks for sharing your expertise and your time with us tonight. The vision for this series was to look at issues that faced our community and to figure out what it is that we people, citizens, Christians alike, could do to make a difference. And so there's some things here for us to think about, some advocacy ideas. Hope you'll take those with us. As Suzanne said, please fill out the last page of the handout. Leave it in your seat so we can be in touch with you on that. Also, don't forget that our next rendition of this series is going on May 5th. That's 5/5 at 5. Right here in the same space, we're going to talk about another epidemic in our community, the area of gun violence. So all you got to do is open the page up every day and you see hunger, housing, health, gun violence facing us time and time again. So these are things that we're concerned about. So please pay attention to those things. But for now, let us go forth with this benediction. Dear God, watch over us, keep us safe. Let us go home and ponder what we have heard tonight. Let us go home and think about the historic structures that have led us to this place and about our role. People who are called to follow you, people who are called to make a difference, people who are called to be not just hearers of your word, but doers of your word. And so let us tomorrow, as we rise to face the day, let us roll up our sleeves and let us do our part to make the world better for each other and for our community. Let us do our part so that no one goes hungry here in the land of plenty. In your Son's holy name we pray. Amen. Go in peace.